Alright, hello Rodney. Taking a look at your report, and I'm grading this using video because it's a little easier for me, and hopefully you will appreciate it as well. And feel free to let me know, give me some feedback if you want to. So let's get right into this. Your formatting looks very good. Your page numbers up here were supposed to be. Title looks good. Let's take a look at your introduction. By the year 2030, AI is predicted. Okay, now this seems like a source should be here, a citation. So remember, when you're citing something, even if it's just in the hook here, you want to make sure you cite it properly, and that means here you should probably have the source named here. If the source has an author, you would just put their last name here, and then a page or paragraph number. Or if the source does not have an author, then you would just put the first word of the title in quotation marks or italics, however it is in the works cited page. Might look something like this. Let's say your author is, last name is Thompson, and then you would put a number for, like, if it's page numbering, it would look just like that. Right? However, if there was no page numbering, then what you would do is you would put a comma here, and you would count down to what paragraph number you found it in, and you would put this, PAR period, and then the paragraph number. Let's say it's just number 3. So that's how you do that. But you do have to cite that, since it's obviously coming from a source. Okay. So let's see, AI stands for beware of what all is. You could probably just delete all here. I think that's what it's telling you to do, what it is capable of. Okay, make sure you always put that space after a period. This report seeks to determine both the pros and cons of artificial intelligence. I'm going to go a little further with this and just add to this to make it more of a solid thesis statement. Say something like this, maybe. This report seeks to determine both the pros and cons of artificial intelligence and to understand whether or not it is something we should be concerned about. Something like that, right? In other words, you want it to be an arguable point or assertion that you're making here. Okay, so that you can do that to fix that. AI is advancing fast. Okay, now this is your literature review, presumably. So remember, you want to have bold subheadings here to show me what parts are what. So remember, here you would want to put something like literature review, and then you'd want to put that in bold, and that way I can see what the parts are of your paper. So do that for each section. Okay. Also, once you get into literature review, I should start seeing some citations, some source material being used. So if there's anything that you've written up here that comes from a source, you got to make sure you cite it. Okay. Now here you say in 1956, John McCarthy originally coined the term. This is definitely something I'm assuming you got from a source. So once again, you should cite it. Now, when you get down into the literature review like this, and you're talking about important information, maybe not so much this, just coining the term is not that big a deal. And in this case, you could just put the citation here like I showed you in that introduction. But when you start getting the important information that's actually relevant to the sides of the issue and the argument, then you want to introduce your authors fully. And the way you do that is by introducing them with their full names and something to qualify them. Right, so I'm going to see if I can find an example of somewhere where you either did that or should do it. I think that just does not need a comma there. Okay, this is a bit of a fragment here. Instead of saying one being optimistic, now you could connect it to this sentence and it would make it okay. So you could just change this period to a comma and put a little O here, comma, 1 being optimistic. But if you want to keep it in a sentence by itself, then you would have to say something like, one of these views is that AI is progressive, something like that. You got to make a complete sentence. Okay, again, this seems like some information that might need sources, so you just got to remember that you need to cite your sources. If you're not sure how to do that, you want to look at the Easy Writer. You can look at some of my videos about how to do the source citations. You could look at the video under, I think it's under the secondary source, secondary or um, what's it called? Supplemental videos. The one that says integrating source will show you how to do this stuff correctly in the citing stuff within the paper. But that is definitely an issue. You really aren't citing anything, and you've got to do that. Okay, so you definitely need to fix that. You don't need this full thing here as a subtitle, presumably. That could just be, you could put it here by itself and just refer to it as the gap in the research or something like that, right? In bold. And then this part, you could just take it, put it back into regular print instead of bold. But I'm glad to see that, though. Make sure you did a good job of actually discussing the gap, right? That word gap would be the one I would want to see in bold. You don't really have to bold an entire sentence or anything. Just bold the word that shows that it's a gap or weakness or problem or whatever word you use. You can just bold that. Again, source material, I don't see any source material. But you might not need any there. Okay, the research began with key questions again. Okay, so this appears to be your method section, so you could add that subheading in here in bold between here, and it could just say methods. That's all it needs to say, is methods in bold. And here you talk about the key questions, talk about the sources, your criteria. That's great, good job. And talk about whether or not it's reliable. Primary research here, you just talk about doing your interviews and surveys, so that's great. Maybe give an example or two of the questions that you asked to let your audience know what kind of questions you were considering and information you were looking for. Now, don't forget that, okay, here it is. This is your weakness. Again, the only word you really need to bold is the word problems, or word weakness, whatever you use. In this case, it looks like you use problems. All the rest of this does not have to be bold, so you can just change all of that and just keep the word problems in bold. But that looks like a good, yeah, that's a typical weakness. That's a good weakness to talk about, so that's just fine. Look at these words that have underlines and see what they're saying, because in many cases it's telling you that, like in this case, you need a comma. In this case, it's saying that you need was instead of were. Access to certain academic sources was blocked off. Yeah, that should be was. Okay, so overall, your writing is not bad. The big thing that I'm finding is just that you're not citing sources, pretty much not doing it at all. And that is absolutely a major requirement, something you definitely have to fix. Okay. Now here where you talk about the research revealed, that's probably where you would want to put your results section, right? So that's going to be the next section. The results section would be here in bold. And this is where you're going to talk about what you learned from your research. Okay, here would be your discussion. So you want to put the word discussion in bold here, because that's where you're discussing the results themselves and letting your audience know why they were important and what you want them to get out of them. Here's your source or your graphic. That's good. Now, up here in this sentence preceding the graphic, you want to introduce the graphic. You want to state something like the graph below where it shows such and such, right? You want to do something to introduce the graphic that's coming up. Then you have the graphic looks good. You have your title of the graphic up there. Now, underneath here, you need to make sure that you have a figure number, and then that's what you refer to it by as figure 1, whatever, right? So you should have a figure number here, and then after that, you should have a short description of what this is about, and it could just simply say something like chart revealing the growth of artificial intelligence from such and such year, 2015 to 2025, right? And then after that, you need the full citation of it from wherever source you got it from. So that would go under here instead of on the works cited page. You can just put it all right under the chart. Then you talk about here like you did what the chart shows. Okay, this is tabbed in a little too far. Remember, you only want to tab in this far. See how it's compared to this one down here. Okay, looking pretty good. I'm assuming this is your conclusion, so you want to make sure you put a bold subheading here just saying conclusion. Now, somewhere in the conclusion or in the discussion, you should also remind your audience of those weaknesses or gaps and talk about how your work may or may not be affected by by those weaknesses, just to remind your audience. And another great thing to do, if you can, that's really effective, is to actually provide an answer to the gap. If you can mention what you think might be a way to fill that gap or fix the gap in the known research, that's even more impressive because it shows you're putting your own thoughts into it and adding to the discussion in a very strong way. So you might want to try to do that too, even if you can. Otherwise, that's pretty good overall. And then here's your source citations, your sources. These all need to be cited properly within the paper. Okay, so you want to make sure you go back and make sure all these things are cited properly. Now, some of these are not correctly. This one, like here, for example, is done in APA, and you don't want that. It should be, all of them should be in MLA. So, for example, having the ND, no date here, that tells me it's APA, and it should not be that way. It should look like this one. This is what all your entries should look like. No year or date or anything in parentheses up here. Also, you don't use retrieved. That's, again, another indication of AI. Or not AI. That's another indication of APA. Okay. Major words should all be capitalized in the titles, like this up here. And so you want to make sure you fix those. Yeah, this is another one here that's APA. You want to fix that as well. All right, so once you've fixed all these things, what you need to do is you need to go through here and you need to fix everything that I pointed out, especially if you need to get help with from a tutor or somebody, or even me. Let me know, or get a tutor to help you with those in-text citations, or just look it up in the videos that I've provided already and stuff. You might be able to get it from that. But you want to make sure that you fix everything, and what you need to do is you need to annotate everything that you fix. You need to highlight the thing that you fix. You need to highlight it with the green highlighter, and then over here on the right you need to put a note, an annotation, telling me what you did to fix it. Okay, you need to do that for every single thing that you fix, and that way when I look at it again, I can see all the things that you've done to fix it. All right. And I also highly suggest that after you fix all this stuff, that you resubmit it either to the assignment, or if it won't let you do that, just email it to me. And that way I can give you more feedback and we can make sure your paper gets awesome for the final portfolio. All right, so that'll do it. If you have questions or need help, again, just let me know.